welcome to the 10th edition of the Business World Marketing White Book Conclave. This time you will witness a host of sessions deliberating on the generational shift in consumer behavior. With a theme like Gauging Generations, the focus of the conclave will be on the millennials, who are the biggest influencers in the marketplace today. Before we dive into the topic, let's witness how the editor-in-chief of Times Now, Arnab Goswami, has reinvented the news media.
Thank you for being here. Brace yourselves for a very interesting session because we have a very interesting guest. In the metaphor of TV, my guest tonight, none other than Arnab Goswami, who needs no introduction whatsoever. So let's dive into my first question. I've met Arnab several times before, and I see the man Arnab Goswami as so different from the way my wife sees him on television. So just now I had a 15-minute chat with him, and I cannot imagine how this man transforms himself when there's a camera in front of him. I mean, he is, I don't know what. So Arnab, how does that happen? Yes. I mean, I'm always the same, whether in front of the camera or off it. Whereas for you, when you're talking to me and everyone, you're so soft, gentle, nice, and suddenly there's a camera and wow! I'm taking you on, even if I don't need to.
Sam, you're enjoying this now. When I started my career in Times Now in 2006, what I did was very different. It was the first episode of NewsHour. Nobody must be watching. Our distribution was poor. The channel was hardly known. I looked nervous, unsure of myself, and very conscious of what was happening around me. I would say that in my first interview on the NewsHour on that night, compared to now, I was almost submissive.
2006.
2006. And I'm being very honest because, you know, Sam, I'm not Superman of news. I have been through my learning curve. I went through a huge learning curve, and I keep repeating this story every day, that one day when that boy fell into the well, Prince fell into the well, when we ran that story for 24 hours, Sam, and we asked one question: is this story of Prince the limit of government apathy? Because the job of filling up the manhole is the government. So you magnify a local story, build it to a national context, and then force people all over saying that, you know, don't remain quiet about it. This can happen to your child too. So news for the first time, Sam, began connecting to the people's hearts. I believe the transformation began the day I began to realize that the search for ratings is not complete unless it comes from the heart. And I also began to realize that in this country, unless you overemphasize a point which needs to be made, nobody pays any attention. And I began to see that if in a news bulletin you put one story, the politician does not even notice Sam. If the Commonwealth Games scam was to be a 2-minute story in a 24-minute bulletin, do you think Suresh Kalmadi would have resigned? If you want to hammer home a point, if you want to go after something, don't diminish it. So very often when we are pointing out an issue and going relentlessly after one subject, it is because we want that subject to go to its logical conclusion.
You want some action out of it, and you want the powers that be to take some concrete action.
We want
that's wonderful.
We want response, Sam. We really want the system to respond to us. And when the system responds to us, I know that a lot of people feel empowered.
Is it by design that I keep seeing the same faces on NewsHour? I watch NewsHour pretty regularly. So one of the things that always sort of surprises me, that yes, I want to see how Arnab is tackling these guys and how he's putting them in the dock and how these guys are sweating. And I like all that. But tell me, why is it that with such alarming frequency I see the same faces? I mean, is that in your control?
No.
Or does that, it's not in your control?
No, it's not totally in my control.
Why?
Because all these parties, they nominate people, you see. And they somehow feel that some people are good at tackling me. So I was told Congress party had a briefing where one of the persons said, this Congress spokesman said, that all the politicians were on stage and one person goes and said, oh, you are Arnab Goswami, now talk like him, and this person starts talking like me, and the spokesperson goes on, and there's this whole contest which goes on, at the end of which they realize the best way to tackle me is never to stop. So if you've noticed, I have very often seen, I have told the Congress spokesman, why don't you stop? And now the BJP guys watch it, they say that's a good strategy, so we have both of them talking together at the same time. And you are caught in the middle of this, and people tell me, why do you do this? I'm a victim, Sam. I'm a victim. I'm not a choreographer.
So to transform the news media, Arnab Goswami believes in reporting news from the heart. It is time for a short break, but you stay tuned as in the next session we will decode the selfie factor. Welcome back. You're watching the 10th edition of the Business World Marketing White Book Conclave. Now, the new buzzword in the market is the selfie, and from Barack Obama to Narendra Modi, the selfie craze has swept through the generation gap. But what exactly is the selfie all about? Let's find out just that in the section Marketing to the Selfie Generation.
While the numbers might be looking small, as a behavior, this behavior, if it gets enabled, by technology, by devices, is a very natural human behavior. It is a human behavior. If you love yourself, the world will love you is something that we've heard generations down. People say if the tree doesn't nourish itself, how will it bear fruit? Earlier, when you took photographs, they were so staged, they were so managed. You had that picture perfect smile, you had that stiff look on your face, and that's how you would pose for the photograph. Okay? Somebody else would do it for you. Today, when you're actually taking your own pictures, you're exposing yourself. And why are they doing that, Is it because they want to discover themselves? Is it that they're actually in a journey to deep dive and say, who am I? What am I all about? Is it also about some bit of confidence that they have in their own selves? To say, I am what I am, accept me for that.
Isn't it a conversation? Isn't it? So there are two kinds of selfies. One selfie is that it's a self-promotion, celebrity selfie. Yeah. The second purpose of selfie, obviously what seems to be emerging, is you want a conversation. So you put it, and conversation you want it amongst your friends, your relatives, so new dress, and you want a comment. Imagine a selfie which does not attract a single comment. It's a bad selfie. So a good selfie is that invites comments in whichever way. And then you further on make more, and it goes on, and it keeps you busy. You feel depressed, put a selfie on. I think it's from a medical angle, doctors would probably prescribe selfie more and more to people who feel depressed. But you see, other than this selfie, then there is another thing, which I have begun to call it as not selfie, but LC. Now what is LC? LC is, you now begin a conversation on somebody else's picture. So picture of nature, picture of any beautiful thing that you've done. So you are admiring beauty, you are admiring something or some observation. That's how I feel.
From my perspective, being in the industry, selfies is all about saying, okay, I must enable more and more people to take better selfies. Yeah? So as you know, a company like ours has something like, I would say 5,000 to 6,000 feet on street who go shop to shop and actually sell our products. And we have something like 10,000 in-shop promoters. Now managing a field force like as big as that is obviously a big challenge. All 10,000 of the in-shop promoters every morning need to stand in front of the shop that they're assigned and take a selfie. Now the selfie also takes a selfie through an app, which also tracks their location. So every morning we know how many of our promoters actually reported thanks to the photographs that they've taken and the selfies that they've uploaded. So that's how we kind of monitor. The next generation of managers will treat it almost as a tool, that the way you and I treated fax machines in the past, and say, look, this is what we can do with it, even in the way we do business.
Next up in the conclave was a session in which panelists deliberated largely on new media and how this digital, social and mobile generation is impacting on the media strategies these days, and whether it was correct to even call it a new media at all.
I don't think that we should actually discuss about this media as that it is new media any longer. That it is actually a medium which has been existing for quite some time now. It has seen a lot of ups and downs. It has seen a lot of transition happening. It has seen a lot of growth happening. It has seen a lot of experimentation happening on this medium. And today we are far more knowledgeable about this medium than we have ever been before. So, Salil, there is another segment in television, which is the DTH television, right? Which is actually emerged and is actually offering some very, very exciting opportunities. So if you could let us know a little bit about that platform and how it emerged, what is the unique points of that platform and how you have seen it grow.
The DTH or the digital TV as a media, look at the numbers. There are about 135 million TV households in this country and about 120 million CNS households, and DTH is already about 60 to 65 million households. We ourselves are the Asia's largest, about 16 million households. Now the difference between a typical advertising on a TV channel and looking at DTH TV, there's a difference there. It's not TV, it's whole platform. So it's a bouquet of channels, it's a whole pipe that you own when you go on this kind of platform. So the same things that you do there that is advertised on TV channels is not something which is going to work out here. For example, you don't need to come out to this kind of a medium with 30 seconders that you can happily do on the regular TV advertising. What you can look at is longer format, which is maybe half an hour, maybe 15-minute kind of editorials where you engage. So it's about the bombardment of spots versus the engagement. So there are huge options. The times are changing, and I'm sure a lot of media companies and the planners are evolving. I think it's a matter of time before all the marketers look at the different options available and leverage different opportunities to circle around and build up their brand.
Us being an internet company running multiple consumer-facing travel brands like Redbus and GoIbibo, for us, whether we advertise on Times Now or whether we use YouTube, it's not about buying seconds, it's not about buying square centimeter space, which was in the past the way an advertiser would typically buy. And I think most of the purchase in the past, I'm sure a lot of people from the physical media world out here, 70% of that purchase used to happen emotionally, 30% rationally. I think there's a total switch where 80% of it is rational. There is a bit of emotion involved when you are doing these kind of transactions. So the key point that I'm trying to make is that the transition has happened to measurability. So as an example, when we today's date buy television, we actually track what is the quality score improvement on our search queries. And that's so very well trackable and correlated. And I think now, unlike us, which we consider ourselves as an evolved marketeer, because we are in this space, I think companies like Maxus and many others are looking at this from an integrated prism. So I think that's the massive transition which has happened.
Coming to Vikram, do you subscribe to that idea that new media is actually not new any longer, that it is something that has now become a very integral part of the plans that the client or the agencies make?
Undoubtedly. And I think right now the discussion is just about how to accelerate this. About 5-6 years back, digital was maybe 2 to 3% of the ADEX. Today it will be about 6-8%. And globally it stands at about 20% at a total global level. I suspect that the potential of India today would be closer to 12-13%. I think that's the real opportunity. We always talk about media's effectiveness and efficiency, but truth be told, efficiency is being put under an electron microscope and effectiveness has been given a glossed over.
Yeah.
Your people are talking output, they're not talking outcome.
Yeah.
Now, digital allows us the ability to actually talk outcome. What digital does is actually demystify the black box and actually allow a whole lot of lead indicators to emerge, which can actually, the entire aspect of attribution or trying to see what leads to what, and therefore which led to the final purchase, that becomes visible to all. And I think that's huge. And I think our ability to then, and underpinning all of this is data and what we do with it. But I am really, really hopeful that in the next 10 years, efficiency will have had enough, and now we really start talking effectiveness.
It's time for a short break, but a lot of important discussions await you on the other side. Keep watching ET Now. Welcome back. You're watching the 10th edition of the Business World Marketing White Book Conclave. The conclave focused on the generational shift in marketing strategies, with the panelists focusing on how their companies have adapted to the needs of the new consumer.
If I can really start with, Rakesh, understanding from you on the inflection point, the challenge, marketing challenge for the first 100 crores, and the inflection point since then.
Krishna, we started off in 1988, and all the way till 2006, it was essentially laying the foundations. And it is pre-liberalization era, pre-millennials era, and a lot of the environment towards entrepreneurship was not as good as what it is today. And I saw that the foundation that we had built from 88 up till 2006 really helped take off. The business was helped by by that foundation. But then really what the inflection was the change in consumer behavior. I mean, nobody wanted to suffer a power cut anymore. Nobody wanted to wait any longer. So I think from that point onwards, this whole inflection took place. So I think our big connect with the subject today here is that we saw our business take shape, essentially driven by this change in consumer mindset. And then, of course, there are plenty of other things that we can talk about.
It is. We deal with a category where, some of the insights we find in the 14 to 19, the first shaver TG, for example, where, to be clean shaven is to be mama's boy,
right,
in this generation. And we find core insights in the TG that, grooming and trimming is the new shaving. Very different from the traditional, if you will, in the later generations, as the marketeers call it, the Brahminical restraint that India has always stood for. In some senses, for a very long time, it has been substance over style,
sure,
which has kind of defined India, and the emphasis on education and substance over style and benefit maximization. Gradually morphing to bringing more balance to style and design and elements like that as well in the newer generations. So very keenly, as we straddle multiple businesses, so we are actually a composite of 21 businesses underlying the three sectors. We see that the more than just a generational divide, it's more, there are unique consumer TGs that we target in each business, and no one business is actually similar to the other in terms of the buying behavior. So it's a unique mix of categories that we play in today, which is very different from also the Philips of yesterday as well.
Change is perpetually constant, especially in the highly volatile marketplace. And staying relevant in a millennial-driven marketplace is a tough task, especially for established brands. We have Venkatesh Kini of Coca-Cola, who shares his thoughts on this topic.
Let's talk about millennials a little bit. Millennials are different, right? They are irreverent. They have shorter attention spans. I've got a college-going kid, and I can tell you that I know that from personal experience. And the way to connect with them, again, is content that spreads through time with or without us. Now, does it sound familiar? How we've used stories and connections to connect with today's millennia. So one is Coke Studio, the other one is Sprite Team Till I Die. So let's start with Coke Studio. Coke Studio is a simple concept. It actually originated in Brazil. And it was picked up by Pakistan. And they created a fabulous concept around it. And then later it's moved to India, and now it's gone to many parts of the world. Coke Studio is actually now almost a global or a multi-country platform. And it's all about connecting different kinds of music that wouldn't normally get together, right? And creating original content, but leveraging lesser known or emerging musicians. So over the last 2 years, we've connected Coke Studio with our consumers, with our target audience, using multiple platforms, whether it's television, the package, the label, internet, obviously, radio. We've used concerts, we've used a whole host of other connection points. Today, I think Coke Studio has become almost an integral part of our marketing plans. But again, in the earlier session, you heard about how teens today or millennials today want to be part of the storytelling themselves. And to do that, it's all about user-generated content. So Sprite, which has always been about Bujhaye Only Pyas, Baki Aur Bakwas, or Clear Hair, we came up with this property called Team Till I Die, which essentially invited college students to express themselves on YouTube using their own chal. So in 60 days, we reached 50% of the youth target audience in Facebook. And the kinds of content that was generated blew us away. So what does this mean for engaging with people? It's the same old formula. The power of a story well told. It's about human emotions, connecting with human emotions, the same as it's always been. And it's about appealing to a higher purpose. So I want to end this talk with a little example of what I think is an idea that encapsulates all of this. This is an idea where we told a story about blind footballers in Brazil who would never get to see the FIFA World Cup because they can't see it. But as per rules of FIFA, only kings and heads of states or the captains of the winning teams are allowed to touch the FIFA trophy. They made only one exception. It was for blind footballers, because they couldn't see the trophy, they allowed them to touch it. So that's all I had to share with you. Thank you for your time.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the time that we have been waiting for to unveil the Business World Marketing White Book.
So that was all from the 10th edition of the Business World Marketing White Book Conclave. We hope these business insights have helped you understand marketing strategies for your business. It is time to say goodbye, but you keep watching ET Now.